The morning of my wedding felt like something out of a dream. I woke up to soft sunlight pouring through the curtains of the bridal suite, my best friends buzzing around me with excitement, and the faint smell of roses drifting in from the arrangements being set up in the ballroom below. For months, I had been planning this day with meticulous care, pouring not only my heart but also my savings into making sure it was perfect. It wasn't just about marrying Daniel, the man I loved more than anything. It was about stepping into a future I had built for myself with years of discipline and sacrifice. There was a strange sense of security in knowing that everything was aligned. Daniel and I were ready to start our lives together, and with him by my side, I felt unstoppable. I had inherited a life insurance policy worth millions after my grandmother passed away, an odd thing for someone my age, but my grandmother had been both wealthy and oddly traditional in her approach to family. She wanted to make sure I was taken care of, that I would never need to depend on anyone else. But the catch was written clearly in the clause. Once I was legally married, my husband automatically became a 50% beneficiary. Half of that fortune, half of my security, half of everything I had so carefully guarded would belong to Daniel the moment we signed those papers and the priest declared us husband and wife. I had thought long and hard about it, but Daniel had always been trustworthy, loving, and reliable. He wasn't greedy, wasn't manipulative, and had never once made me feel like he loved me for my money. He made me laugh when I was drowning in stress, he supported my career, and he made me believe in a kind of partnership I had only ever dreamed of. Of course, the one thorn in all of this had always been my younger sister, Marissa. Marissa was 2 years younger, and unlike me, she had always lived life on her own terms, careless and reckless. Where I had been cautious and deliberate, she had been impulsive. Where I had studied, saved, and planned, she had chased thrills, attention, and drama. I loved her because she was my sister, but our relationship had always been difficult. My parents often compared us, but not in the way you might think. They called me the strong one, but not in a way that felt complimentary. It was more of a burden. I was dependable, reliable, the one they could count on. Marissa, on the other hand, was treated as fragile, as if she were porcelain that could shatter at any moment. Any mistake she made was brushed aside with excuses. She's still young, she didn't mean it, she just needs guidance. It meant that more often than not, she got away with things that would have landed me in serious trouble. She was spoiled, even if my parents never admitted it. And over time, it created a wedge between us. She always seemed to resent the fact that I was more put together, and I couldn't stand how she thrived on drama like it was oxygen. But still, I had invited her to be a bridesmaid. Because despite everything, she was my sister. And a small part of me had hoped that maybe, just maybe, this could be a day where we put all our differences aside. She had been acting strange in the weeks leading up to the wedding, though. Distracted, secretive, constantly texting someone but refusing to tell me who it was. She mentioned she had a boyfriend, but nobody had ever seen him. She'd brush off questions with a coy smile and say, "You'll find out when it's time." My parents rolled their eyes at her mystery, but once again, they let it slide. I didn't think much of it. I had bigger things on my plate: seating charts, vows, last-minute alterations, dealing with my aunt who complained endlessly about being seated too close to the speakers. I didn't have time to decode whatever drama Marissa was cooking up. By the time I stood in front of the mirror, veil draped delicately over my curls and dress fitting like a second skin, I felt ready. Nervous, yes, but ready. Daniel was everything I had ever wanted, and soon I would be his wife. That was all that mattered. The ceremony went smoothly at first. Daniel looked so handsome in his tailored suit, his smile steady as he took my hand at the altar. The vows passed in a blur of emotion, my voice trembling with tears as I promised forever. My parents were beaming in the front row, and Marissa stood to the side in her bridesmaid dress, smirking like she always did but otherwise keeping herself contained. When the priest guided us through the formalities, my heart swelled. This was it. This was the moment my life truly began. Afterward, the reception kicked off in a wave of laughter, clinking glasses, and dancing. The ballroom shimmered with light, the band played soft music, and for the first time all day, I let myself relax. I was surrounded by friends, family, and the man I thought would be mine forever. I felt untouchable. But then the sound of a glass being tapped cut through the music. Clink, clink, clink. All eyes turned toward Marissa. She stood near the center of the ballroom, her cheeks flushed, eyes glittering with something I couldn't quite place. She raised her glass with the kind of dramatic flair she'd always been known for. My stomach twisted. Nothing good ever came from that expression on her face. "I have an announcement," she said loudly, her voice carrying across the room. The band quieted. The guests stilled. My heart dropped straight to my shoes. "I'm pregnant." The room erupted in gasps. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, my father stiffened in his chair, and guests immediately began whispering. I felt my jaw go slack. Pregnant? At my wedding? Why on earth would she think now was the right time to say something like that? I wanted to scream, to tear into her for stealing my moment. But before I could say anything, she smiled wider and added, "And the father of my baby is sitting right here, at the groom's table." My vision blurred. The words hit me like a truck. The groom's table. My groom's table. I turned slowly, eyes scanning the men seated near Daniel. Daniel's face had gone pale, his eyes wide, his hands trembling slightly against the tablecloth. The guests began buzzing louder, eyes darting between him and me, speculation rippling like a wave. I couldn't breathe. My throat closed, my heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? That Daniel, my Daniel, was the father of her child? The betrayal sliced into me before I even had confirmation. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to make sense of the nightmare unfolding in front of me. And then Marissa's gaze flicked toward Daniel, her smile tightening. "The truth always comes out," she said softly, almost smugly. My knees wobbled, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. Around me, I heard the murmurs, the judgment, the pity. My wedding day, my perfect, carefully planned day, was unraveling before my eyes. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this was only the beginning. The silence that followed Marissa's words was deafening, the kind of silence that swallows a room whole. I could hear the faint hum of the lights above, the scrape of someone's fork as it dropped to a plate, the rustle of dresses as guests leaned toward each other in hushed whispers. My chest rose and fell too quickly, panic clawing at me, and my gaze locked on Daniel. His face was a study in shock, eyes darting, lips parted, sweat breaking out across his forehead. He didn't say anything. He didn't deny it. The absence of his denial was an answer in itself, and the crowd picked up on it. I caught the wide-eyed look of my cousin across the table, my aunt whispering behind her hand, the gossipy gleam in the eyes of one of Daniel's co-workers. My parents stared, mouths open, frozen in disbelief. But no one was as loud as the voice in my own head screaming at me, "This can't be happening." Marissa basked in the chaos. She placed a protective hand on her stomach, tilting her chin like a queen making a decree. "I know this isn't the announcement anyone expected today," she said, feigning sweetness, "but it's the truth. And I couldn't keep it a secret any longer." Gasps and murmurs rippled again. My hands trembled so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. I wanted Daniel to jump up, to scream that it wasn't true, to laugh it off, to do anything other than sit there in silence. But he just sat there, paralyzed, his eyes flickering between me and Marissa like he was drowning. I finally found my voice, though it came out cracked. "Daniel." He flinched. His lips moved, but no words came out. His silence was its own betrayal. Tears pricked my eyes, burning hot against my lashes. My chest felt like it might cave in. The man I had promised forever to, the man I had believed in completely, was sitting across from me in silence while my sister claimed to be carrying his child. "I can't believe this," I whispered, though the words were more to myself than anyone else. Marissa smirked, catching it. "You should. He wasn't as faithful as you thought." The words stabbed me straight through the heart. My vision blurred with tears and my whole body went cold. Around me, people shifted uncomfortably, some looking at me with pity, others at Daniel with disgust. My perfect wedding day had become a circus, and I was the fool in the center ring. Then, in the chaos, a male voice spoke up. "Marissa, what are you doing?" The voice came from the far end of the groom's table. A tall man with dark hair stood, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. His face was unfamiliar, yet there was a flicker of recognition in the way Marissa looked at him. The room went silent again. Marissa's confident smirk faltered. "This isn't what we agreed on," the man continued, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the air. "You said you wanted to wait. That you'd tell them differently. You said—" "Adrian, sit down," Marissa snapped, panic flashing across her face. Adrian. The name clicked instantly. The secret boyfriend. The man none of us had ever seen, the mystery she'd teased for months. Whispers surged like wildfire through the guests. Adrian? The father? Then why point at Daniel? Adrian's eyes burned with fury as he looked around the room, then back at Marissa. "You're lying. You're making me look like a fool. I loved you and you dragged me into this? You're trying to ruin your sister's wedding just to make yourself the center of attention? What the hell is wrong with you?" The blood drained from Marissa's face. "Shut up," she hissed. But it was too late. The damage was spreading like cracks in glass. People were whispering louder now, heads swiveling between Adrian and Marissa. My parents were rigid in their chairs, pale and stunned. Daniel's hands were pressed against his face, and for the first time I noticed tears brimming in his eyes. My pulse hammered in my ears as the reality sank in. Marissa had staged this. She had twisted the narrative to make it look like Daniel was the father, to destroy me on my wedding day. And for what? Tension? Jealousy? To finally have the spotlight she always felt was hers? Priest, who had been standing silently near the edge of the room, finally stepped forward, raising his hand. His voice carried with calm authority, though the timing of his words made the entire ordeal even more surreal. "Enough. This chaos must end. There is something I must clarify before this goes any further." All eyes turned toward him. He cleared his throat. The ceremony earlier was not legally completed. A collective gasp rippled across the room. My stomach flipped. The priest continued. "There was an error in the paperwork. Certain signatures were missing, and therefore I could not officially declare you husband and wife. Until it is resolved, Lena and Daniel are not married. The room exploded again, shouts, whispers, shock. I felt my body sway as if the floor beneath me had been pulled away. Not married. After everything, after my vows, my tears, my belief that I had sealed my future with Daniel, none of it counted. Marissa's face twisted with panic. She glanced between me, Daniel, and Adrian, her hands shaking. Her plan to ruin me was collapsing in on itself. Without the legal marriage, Daniel had no ties to me, no access to my inheritance, no role as my husband. Her attempt to paint him as unfaithful suddenly carried no weight. And yet, the humiliation still cut deep. The whispers around me weren't just about her lies. They were about me, about how my own sister had sabotaged the happiest day of my life, about how my fiancé had failed to defend me in the moment I needed him most. Adrian's voice broke through again, louder now, shaking with anger. Marissa, I stood by you because I loved you. I never wanted this. I would never hurt your sister. But you framed me, you made me complicit in your little game, and for what? To humiliate her? To destroy everything she had? Do you even realize what you've done? Tears spilled down Marissa's cheeks. I know, I didn't mean. But the words tangled in her throat. For once, she had no performance left, no clever retort, no shield of drama to protect her. She stood in front of everyone, stripped bare by the truth. I couldn't take it anymore. The walls of the ballroom felt like they were closing in on me. My chest heaved, my head spun, and the murmurs of the guests became a dull roar. Without another word, I turned and walked out. Cold night air hit me like a slap, sobering me instantly. I didn't care that my veil trailed behind me on the ground, that my dress dragged through dirt, that my makeup was streaked with tears. I just needed to breathe. To get away. To put distance between myself and the wreckage inside. Behind me, I heard voices shouting, footsteps echoing, but I didn't look back. Not for Daniel, not for Marissa, not for anyone. Because in that moment, I realized something gut-wrenching. This wasn't just about a ruined wedding. It was about the cracks in my family, in my relationship, and everything I thought was solid. It was about betrayal, manipulation, and a love I wasn't sure had ever truly existed. And as I disappeared into the night, one thought haunted me. If this was only the beginning, how much worse was it going to get? The night air clung to my skin like a second layer, cool and heavy, grounding me in a way the chaos inside the ballroom never could. I stood under the dim glow of the outdoor lamps, my veil fluttering in the wind, my breath fogging in the crisp air as tears streamed down my cheeks. I should have been inside dancing, holding Daniel's hand, celebrating the happiest day of my life. Instead, I was standing outside alone, trembling, my heart shredded by betrayal and humiliation. I heard the ballroom doors creak open behind me. Footsteps followed, hesitant, deliberate. I knew before I even turned that it was him. Lena, Daniel's voice cracked, raw, almost desperate. I turned my head slightly but didn't face him fully. Don't! He flinched at the word, but he kept coming closer until he stood a few feet away. His eyes were swollen and red, his hair messy from running his hands through it. He looked broken. I swear to you, he said, his voice trembling, I didn't do this. I didn't touch her. I didn't. I finally spun around, my rage pushing past the ache in my chest. Then why didn't you say that in there? Why didn't you stand up and tell everyone she was lying? You just sat there, Daniel. You let everyone believe you betrayed me with my sister. His mouth opened and closed like he was searching for words. I froze. I didn't know what to say. It was like everything blurred. I couldn't think. And when Adrian stood up, I thought maybe letting him talk would clear it all up without me making it worse. You thought silence was better? My voice cracked with fury and heartbreak. You thought watching me crumble in front of everyone was better? He shook his head violently, tears streaking down his cheeks now. No. God, no. Lena, you have to believe me. I've never touched Marissa. I love you. I only love you. I don't care about her games. I didn't know she would do this. I didn't know about the pregnancy. I didn't know about Adrian. I swear on everything I am. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. Every part of me screamed for this to be some terrible mistake. But the image of him sitting silent while my sister tried to burn me alive wouldn't leave my mind. Love wasn't supposed to be silence. Love was supposed to be protection, defense, partnership. And in my moment of public destruction, he hadn't been there. I don't know if I can believe anything anymore, I whispered, my voice breaking. He stepped forward, reaching for me, but I pulled back. His hand hovered in the air between us like a ghost of something that used to be whole. Lena, please, he begged. The paperwork, the priest, this means we have another chance. We're not married yet. We can walk back in there, sign what needs signing, start over. And we can prove them all wrong. I laughed bitterly, a sound that felt like it tore straight from my lungs. Start over? After that? After my sister tried to destroy me and you let her? After my parents are probably inside right now comforting her instead of me? You think a signature fixes this? He looked like I'd slapped him, but he didn't argue. He just stood there, broken, desperate, silent again. And then another voice cut through the night. Of course he thinks his signature fixes it. But that's all men ever think. I turned to see Marissa standing in the doorway, her makeup streaked from tears, her hair disheveled, her hands still trembling. She looked less like the victorious sister she had tried to be and more like a child caught in her own firestorm. You've done enough, I spat, my voice low and sharp. Her lips quivered, but she lifted her chin like she always did. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Adrian's voice followed hers, sharp and heavy with disgust. He emerged behind her, his fists clenched. You didn't mean for it to go this far? You orchestrated the entire thing, Marissa. You lied to everyone. You tried to ruin your sister's wedding. You humiliated me in front of people I don't even know. And for what? So you could be the center of attention again? Marissa whipped around to him, her eyes wide with panic. No, Adrian, I swear, I wanted to make it dramatic. You wanted to destroy her, Adrian snapped, his voice cold. And you almost destroyed me with it. You know damn well I've loved you from the start. I've supported you, kept your secrets, stayed hidden because you wanted me to. And this is how you repay me? By framing me in front of her? By making it look like I was part of this circus? Tears streamed down her cheeks as she reached for him. No, Adrian, I love you, I swear. I wasn't trying to ruin you. But he stepped back, disgust written all over his face. You've ruined yourself. My heart pounded as I watched the scene unfold, my entire family's mess unraveling under the dim lights outside the ballroom. My sister sobbing, her boyfriend spitting venom, my fiancé standing useless between us all. It was like some twisted play, and I was the unwilling star. Daniel ran a hand through his hair and turned to me again, his voice cracking. Lena, please. I can't lose you. Not like this. I'll prove it to you, I'll do whatever it takes. But his words fell flat. Because in the back of my mind, I could already hear my parents' voices. They weren't going to rally behind me. They were going to circle around Marissa like they always had. They were going to say she was young, confused, hormonal, fragile. They were going to tell me not to be selfish, to think of her child, to keep the family together. I could already feel the weight of the guilt they would throw on me. I looked at all of them, the broken man who wanted me to forgive his silence, the sister who had set fire to my happiness just to bask in the flames, the boyfriend who realized too late that he had hitched himself to someone toxic. And I realized something. I didn't have to fix this. I didn't have to carry this family anymore. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to be the strong one who patched over everyone else's chaos. So I turned, my veil snapping in the wind, and walked away. Behind me, I heard Marissa's sobs, Daniel's desperate calls, Adrian's curses. But I didn't look back. Because I knew in that moment, walking away was the only power I had left. And even if it meant walking straight into loneliness, it was better than staying shackled to betrayal. The next morning, the sun felt cruel. Streamed through my curtains as if the world hadn't ended the night before. My phone buzzed endlessly on the nightstand, calls, texts, voicemails, but I couldn't bring myself to look. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the events of the wedding replaying on a loop. Marissa clinking her glass, Daniel's silence, Adrian's fury, the priest's declaration. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, heard the whispers, felt the humiliation again. I thought if I stayed in bed long enough, maybe it would all go away. But eventually, the pounding on my door forced me up. I opened it to find my mother standing there, her face tight with stress. She didn't hug me, didn't comfort me, just brushed past me into the apartment as if she owned it. Do you have any idea how much damage you caused last night? She demanded, turning to face me. I blinked at her in disbelief. What I caused? Are you kidding me? Marissa hijacked my wedding and accused my fiancé of fathering her baby in front of everyone. Mother sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose as if I were the one being unreasonable. Marissa is pregnant, Lena. She's scared, confused, emotional. You know how she is. She didn't think it through. She never thinks anything through, I snapped, anger surging through me. And I'm always the one who pays for it. Not this time. I'm not cleaning up her mess. Her eyes narrowed. You sound selfish. The word cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Selfish. That was the dagger my parents always wielded against me whenever I pushed back. I had been conditioned my whole life to believe my role was to carry the family, to be the dependable one, to sacrifice. Marissa's recklessness was always forgiven, but my boundaries were always painted as selfishness. I lost my wedding, I said quietly, my voice trembling. My future. My trust in Daniel. And you're standing here telling me I'm selfish? My mother's expression softened for just a moment, but then she straightened again, resolute. Marissa needs stability now. She's carrying a child. She can't do this alone. You're her sister. You should understand that. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. She didn't care about stability when she stood up and tried to destroy me. She didn't care about me at all. Before my mother could respond, my phone buzzed again on the counter. She glanced at it, then back at me. That's probably Daniel. You should talk to him. You two can still fix this. The marriage wasn't finalized, but it can be. You can work through this, and the family can recover its reputation. People will forget in time. I stared at her in shock. You want me to marry him? After what just happened? He's a good man, she said firmly. He stood by you, he's apologizing, he'll learn from this. And if you push him away, people will think the rumors are true, that he really did sleep with Marissa. Do you want that kind of stain on the family? I felt my stomach turn. It wasn't about my pain. It wasn't about my humiliation. It was about the family's reputation. As always, I'm not marrying him, I said flatly. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Then you'll be destroying more than just yourself. You'll be tearing this family apart. I couldn't listen anymore. I grabbed my phone, stepped outside, and slammed the door behind me. When I finally scrolled through my messages, I found exactly what I expected. Dozens of texts from Daniel, all variations of "please let me explain, I love you, I can fix this." Messages from extended relatives asking if it was true. Social media tags already spreading whispers about the wedding disaster of the year. And buried among them a single message from Adrian. I'm sorry. She dragged me into this. I never wanted to hurt you. For what it's worth, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. I sat on a bench outside my building, phone clutched in my hands, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal, the silence, or the fact that my own parents had already chosen Marissa over me yet again. Later that evening, I got a call from my father. His voice was softer than my mother's but carried the same undertone of pressure. Lena, I know this is hard. But your sister needs us right now. She's pregnant, she's frightened, and Adrian is furious with her. She doesn't have anyone else. She has you, I said coldly. He sighed. She needs stability, Lena. And you need to think about what's truly important. Don't throw away your future over pride. Daniel loves you. He's begging for forgiveness. If you marry him, things will settle. The family will settle. And Marissa will calm down, knowing she's not being abandoned. I bit back a bitter laugh. So you want me to marry Daniel, not because I love him, not because I trust him, but because it'll make Marissa feel better? There was a long pause on the other end. Finally, he said, sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. I hung up. The days that followed were relentless. Every phone call, every visit, every message carried the same theme. Don't be selfish, think of Marissa, think of the baby, think of the family. My parents paraded her around as the poor, fragile victim of circumstance. She cried to anyone who would listen, spinning the story to make it sound like she had simply been overwhelmed at the wedding, like she hadn't meant to hurt me, like it was all just a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Daniel kept calling, sending flowers, begging me to meet him. I ignored him at first, but eventually exhaustion wore me down. I agreed to meet him at a cafe, if only to tell him once and for all that it was over. When I walked in, he looked like a man on the edge. His eyes were hollow, his suit wrinkled, his hands trembling around his coffee cup. The moment he saw me, he reached across the table, but I kept my hands in my lap. Lena, please, he said, his voice raw. I swear to you, I never touched Marissa. I never would. She blindsided me just like she blindsided you. I froze because I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make it worse. But I love you. I love you so much. I can't lose you. I studied him, searching for any flicker of dishonesty. He looked broken, genuine, desperate. And maybe he was telling the truth. But even if he was, even if he had never touched her, the fact remained. When I needed him most, he hadn't been there. He hadn't fought for me. And that silence had spoken louder than any denial could. I believe you didn't touch her, I said quietly. But I don't believe you can protect me. Not when it matters. His face crumpled, but I stood and walked away. The harassment from my parents only intensified after that. They called me cold, heartless, ungrateful. They told me I was abandoning my sister in her time of need. They told me I was destroying the family. But I held my ground. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. And though it left me isolated, though it left me branded as the selfish one, there was a strange sense of peace in it too. 'Cause maybe being selfish was exactly what I needed to survive. The storm didn't fade, it grew louder. By the 5th day after the wedding that wasn't, I felt like my life was no longer mine. My phone became a weapon used against me. Every ping was a jab, every notification a reminder that I had lost control of the story. It started with relatives, my mother's sisters, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, texting me variations of the same guilt-drenched lecture. You need to forgive. Think of the baby. Don't be bitter, Lena. You'll regret it. Then came the social media posts. Pictures from the wedding circulated online. Me in my gown, Daniel pale at the altar, Marissa with her smug hand on her stomach. Captions weren't cruel at first, just speculative. Unbelievable drama at the Wilson wedding. Family secrets exposed. But speculation fed gossip and gossip bred narrative. Suddenly, I wasn't the wronged bride anymore. I was the jealous sister, the bitter woman who couldn't stand her siblings' happiness. And Marissa made sure of it. She had always been skilled at playing the victim, but this time she perfected her performance. On her private Instagram, which wasn't private anymore because people shared screenshots, she wrote long, weepy posts about how difficult pregnancy was, how alone she felt, how she never meant to hurt anyone but was pushed into a corner. She didn't outright accuse me, but she didn't need to. Her followers filled in the blanks. Comments were brutal. Some sisters are just selfish. Blood is supposed to be thicker than water. How can you abandon a pregnant woman, especially when she's family? I stopped checking after the third night because every word carved into me like glass. Meanwhile, my parents doubled down. They didn't just call, they showed up. If I didn't answer the door, they left voicemails describing how Marissa had cried all morning, how she was sick from stress, how I was the reason her health was suffering. They came armed with ultimatums. "Lena," my mother said one evening, sitting stiffly on my couch after forcing her way in, "if you continue down this path, you'll have no family left. None. Is that what you want?" I stared at her, my hands folded in my lap so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I want peace," I said. "Peace." Her voice dripped with disdain. "Peace while your sister is falling apart? While Daniel is begging for forgiveness? While our name is being dragged through the mud? Do you think peace comes from selfishness?" The word again. Selfish. Always selfish. "No," I whispered. "Peace comes from walking away." My father, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "Your sister has nowhere else to go, Lena. Adrian has left her. He told everyone she lied about him. Do you understand what that means? She is pregnant and abandoned. And you're sitting here pretending it has nothing to do with you." The audacity stunned me. "It doesn't," I snapped, my voice rising. "Her choices are her own. Her lies are her own. And if Adrian left, that's because of her, not me." But my words didn't matter. They never did. My parents exchanged a look, one that told me they had already decided I was the villain in this story. "You will regret this," my mother said coldly, standing. "Families don't survive this kind of betrayal." When they left, I collapsed on the couch, trembling. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to claw my way out of my own skin. Instead, I buried my face in my hands and sobbed until the sun came up. Daniel called again the next day. "Against my better judgment," I answered. His voice was ragged, desperate. "Lena, please. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I don't care what people are saying, I just need you. I'll do anything to prove to you that I didn't betray you." "You didn't stop it," I said quietly. "I froze," he cried. I was shocked, blindsided. I didn't know what to say without making it worse. But I'm not guilty of what she accused me of. Please. I can't lose you over a lie. And for the first time, I almost believed him. His voice cracked with such sincerity that a piece of me softened. But another piece remembered my mother's face, my father's words, Marissa's crocodile tears. None of them cared about my truth. They only cared about appearances, about control, about pushing me back into my role as the family's fixer. "I need time," I told him. He exhaled, shaky. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait forever if I have to." But I knew he wouldn't. And deep down, I didn't want him to. A week later, I got the message that finally broke me. It wasn't from my parents or Daniel, it was from Marissa herself. "You ruined everything for me. You've always hated me. You made Adrian leave. You made Mom and Dad turn against me. You're jealous that I'm finally the one people care about. Don't pretend you're innocent, Lena. This is all your fault. My fault. My fault." The words blurred through my tears. I threw my phone against the wall. It shattered, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of relief. But relief didn't last. Without a phone, my parents came in person more often. Relatives knocked on my door. And the whispers followed me everywhere, at the grocery store, on the street, even at work. A client hesitated to shake my hand after hearing the story. My boss pulled me aside to ask if I was mentally fit to continue. I was being eaten alive by a scandal I hadn't created. One night, I sat alone on the balcony, staring at the city lights. I thought about disappearing, changing my number, leaving town, vanishing into a place where no one knew me or Marissa or Daniel or any of it. But then I thought of the insurance policy. That monstrous, glittering shadow that had hung over everything. The millions tied to marriage. Clause that would have made Daniel half-owner the moment vows were sealed. The unspoken reason Marissa had chosen that night, that moment, to strike. She hadn't just wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to take everything. And if the priest hadn't stopped the ceremony, she might have succeeded. The thought chilled me. But it also gave me clarity. For the first time in weeks, I saw the truth through the haze of grief and manipulation. I wasn't just fighting for dignity, I was fighting for my freedom. If I had caved, if I had listened to my parents, if I had let Daniel fix it, I would have tied myself to a future I couldn't trust, a man I couldn't rely on, and a family that had proven they would sacrifice me at the altar of Marissa's mistakes over and over again. I refused. For once, selfishness felt like salvation. And so I made my decision. I wasn't going to save Marissa. I wasn't going to save Daniel. I wasn't even going to save my parents' reputation. I was going to save myself. Even if it meant burning every bridge behind me. Silence became my weapon. When the calls came, I didn't answer. When the knocks rattled my door, I let them echo unanswered. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself, I didn't explain. For the first time in my life, I withdrew completely from my family's war zone, and though the quiet was heavy, it was also liberating. Weeks passed. The fire that had consumed me dulled into embers. I rebuilt my routines, early morning runs, long days at work, quiet evenings with books and tea. Without my phone constantly lighting up with accusations, I started to remember what peace felt like. For the first time, I realized that survival wasn't about bending to their demands. It was about cutting myself free. Of course, they didn't stop. My parents continued to send letters through the mail, pleading and guilting. Marissa herself showed up once, her belly already beginning to show. She pounded on my door, screaming that I had destroyed her life, that I had stolen Adrian from her. Her words were frantic, venomous, but underneath them I heard the crack of desperation. 'Cause Adrian had truly left her. He hadn't just left, he had exposed her. I found out through a colleague at work who had connections with Adrian's firm. He told people the truth. Marissa had trapped him with lies, fabricated stories, manipulated him into being the phantom secret boyfriend she could reveal at my wedding. He swore he'd never touched her, never promised her anything, never wanted a future with her. Her perfect narrative crumbled. And with Adrian's rejection, the fantasy she had woven, one where she was the wronged, glowing bride-to-be carrying a future husband's child, disintegrated. Still, my parents clung to her. They shielded her, defended her, demanded I do the same. She's family, they said again and again, as if blood alone was reason enough to forgive betrayal. But the harder they clung to her, the further I drifted away. And then came the news. Marissa got married. Not to Adrian. He had cut all ties, but to a man she had met hastily in the chaos, someone she had convinced herself would rescue her from the storm. It was a rushed courthouse wedding, quiet and desperate, nothing like the spectacle she had imagined. My parents dressed it up, spread word that it was a private, intimate choice, but everyone knew. It was damage control. I didn't attend. I watched from afar as the cracks spread. The man she married wasn't prepared for her volatility, her lies, her endless hunger for attention. Within months, their union was in shambles. By the time her child was born, they were barely speaking. And less than a year later, they divorced. The same relatives who once lectured me about selfishness now whispered about her recklessness. The sympathy that had once shielded her evaporated, replaced with judgment. Poor thing, they said with pity, but no one rushed to her defense anymore. No one carried her burdens the way I once had. Time moved forward. Seasons shifted. The scandal faded from the gossip mill. My name stopped trending in whispered conversations. Slowly, I became just another woman in the city again. Not the broken bride, not the selfish sister, not the villain in Marissa's story. Just me. And it was enough. One evening, months later, I walked by the old church where my wedding had collapsed. The doors were open, golden light spilling onto the sidewalk. A different bride was stepping out, radiant, her groom beaming beside her. Guests clapped, laughed, threw petals into the air. The sound of joy rang through the street. I paused for a moment, watching. My chest tightened, but not with bitterness. With peace. 'Cause I knew, finally, that happiness didn't have to come from proving myself to anyone else. It didn't have to come from the insurance money or the approval of my parents or the forgiveness of a man who failed me. Happiness could be mine on my own terms. As I turned and walked away, the night air crisp against my skin, I thought of Marissa, alone in her apartment, struggling with the choices she had made, the lies that had caught up to her, the husband who had left. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anything at all. She had written her story. And I had finally begun mine. And that, I realized, was the truest form of justice. Update. It's been over a year since that disaster of a wedding, and I can honestly say I've never felt lighter. My sister rushed into marriage, only to divorce months later, and the family finally saw her for who she really is. My parents still try to paint her as the victim, but I've stopped caring. It's not my job to fix them anymore. I rebuilt my life, kept my insurance in my name, and learned that peace feels better than approval ever could. Sometimes karma doesn't come loud or dramatic. It comes quietly when you realize you've moved on and the people who tried to break you are stuck in the ruins of their own choices.